All right, we're on here with Kurt Elbin, recruiting coordinator at Virginia Tech. Kurt, how are you doing today?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on, Orch. I appreciate it.
Well, we joked before we started today that you and I are both have nap time at our houses. So you're kind of in the side part of the house. I'm in my guest part because we both have kids at a young age.
It's great, man. It's been one of the blessings of this whole quarantine phase, but it's certainly been interesting for me.
Well, good. The first thing I want to mention before we kind of get into the meat of the talk here is I've always admired you from the side as far as your energy level goes. And I've known a couple of guys that played for you that think that you just have superhero-like energy. Where does that come from?
I would think genes, maybe my personality type. I'm high personality A type in terms of just how I operate, but I don't know where it comes from. It's just I think it actually has come out a little more since I've started coaching, and that was, I don't know, 13, 14 years ago. But I appreciate the compliment. It could be the red hair, A-type personality. I don't know, one of those two.
Well, let's talk about your coaching background. You mentioned 13 years. Why don't you give the watchers and viewers where you've coached as far as your career's gone?
Sure. So I started at a small division PA named it's called Muhlenberg, and I was there, and it was just a way to get into coaching. I had no idea what I wanted to do. I'd started my master's right out of college with the thought of getting into some sort of sales or business, and I got an email from my college coach and from Muhlenberg's head coach Corey Goff, and went with him for a year, and then I got my first full-time job was my second year in it. It was at another Division III school across the state of Pennsylvania, over north of Pittsburgh at Thiel College. I was there for 3 years, made my way to Shippensburg for 2, and was lucky enough to go to Sean Stifler. He was the associate head coach at that point. Paul Keys was the head coach. It was an extremely interesting situation. Paul Keys, at that time, had stage 5 melanoma cancer. And Sean Stifler had reached out to me to come down and actually be a volunteer with the ability to recruit, because I had the waiver because of Coach Keys. And Coach Keys unfortunately had passed away there my first season there, my first fall in November. And some things have worked out, and I ended up bumping up to an assistant role. Years, got a great run. Extremely thankful for my time there at VCU. It's kind of, Coach Stifler and Coach Palumbo, when I was there, kind of grew me into what I am today. And I have a lot, of good things to say. And I owe those guys a lot, along with the other guys that have been along my coaching tree. But that brought me to Virginia Tech.
Well, that leads into my first question. Question would be, what's the biggest difference between being a local recruiter from the smaller schools you've been at to Virginia Commonwealth, now to Virginia Tech, kind of being more of a national recruiter? What's the biggest difference for you in that role?
I guess my first thought is accessibility, being accessible to just people across the country, understanding that, Virginia Tech is now a national brand, and not that VCU wasn't. It's just, I think our engineering degree is attractive. So it's one where we get a lot of kids from across the country that inquire about, wanting to come to Virginia Tech. But I guess just being accessible to travel coaches, high school coaches across the country, and then just being able to hopefully understand that type. There's different styles of baseball everywhere you go, from Florida to California, Texas, the Midwest, the Northeast. So just being accessible and understanding those guys in those areas are a little different. And I guess that's my best answer there, Orch.
Different areas you talked about. Do you find yourself when a new year hits? Do you find yourself kind of doing a blank slate, looking for players? Obviously, you have some different grades of recruiting you're doing, or do you go back to the same hubs? What I mean by that is, do you go back to the same travel teams, high schools, JCs, or do you kind of to branch out new every year?
I think you recruit what you know. At least that's what I've done. And my contacts, my strongest contact, Pennsylvania, and then probably Virginia. Being in those states, I grew up in Pennsylvania, but I've coached the longest in in Virginia. So you recruit what you know, but you're always looking for different areas. And when I got to Virginia Tech, I made some pretty good contacts in East Tennessee and into North Carolina. And we've gotten into those states, I think, where in the past Virginia Tech is not so much. And that's been very beneficial for us. So you're always constantly trying to grow your network, but you always go back. I mean, for me, I always go back to what I know the best. And those are kind of people that I've grew up with and people that I really, really trust inside the state. So we know we're a pretty big state school. We got to do well in Virginia, and we try to.
The 2020 class, how many kids do you end up signing? What's the average signing class you have per year? And whatever the number is, how many kids do you look at from a big list to a talking to list to get down to your numbers? What do those numbers look like for you guys?
Oh man, I would love to tell you how many guys I talked to. I've not sat down and counted those, but across each recruiting class, we're trying to bring in. Our goal is, I would say, between 7 and 10, and because we're gonna have to deal with some attrition, through the draft, academics. Kids are going to transfer. Kids are going to transfer because maybe they don't get the playing time they want, and we don't shy away from that. We understand that. At our level in the ACC, kids, you're going to recruit a higher profile type kid, and I put quotes around that. But a kid that expects certain things because he's getting recruited by an ACC school. So that being said, we usually want to stay in between 7 and 10. Our first couple classes were bigger because we had to, for the easiest term to say is adjust our roster. We had to make some adjustments, but we want to stay between 7 and 10. The call list is usually bigger. Our goal is to try to develop good relationships with guys that across the board, but with guys that we're talking to, and then try to funnel that list. And when it hits from an academic perspective to an athletic perspective, and then a makeup perspective, we want to make sure we've exhausted those three kind of tiers. And that's why we talk to probably a couple more kids than we're actually going to end up moving on. And I would say that's probably normal.
What's the biggest bang for your buck as far as the event goes? So obviously you're out recruiting all the time, from games to showcases to tournaments, different parts of the country. What is the top event or top 2 or 3 events for you? You're like, when I go here, I'm going to see good players. There's viable options for us to recruit. What are your top couple favorite events?
The easy way out on that question is our camps. Yeah, and I say that jokingly, but I really mean that. Our camps are the most important thing that we do just because of the recruiting rules now. But to get guys to our camps, we have to go out and see them on a national level. PBR does some good events. My favorite event, and it's one that it's because the kids are uncommitted, is the PBR Futures event that they run at the end of July, early August. Used to be out at Graham Park, but now in Indiana, but now it's in Georgia. That's one of my favorite ones. Perfect Game has really good events from the World Wood Bat events. The PG World Series, the underclass ones are starting to get really good down in Florida. We have to unfortunately go younger and younger, Mike, and I'm starting to like some of the events they're putting on in Hoover. But the biggest bang for our buck, or where we can go and see the most amount of kids in the least amount of time, and usually that's you're looking at Perfect Game events in Georgia and Florida, and then PBR runs some pretty good ones. So,
well, you mentioned a couple of things there I kind of want to hit on. You mentioned you kind of have to go younger, and I think that everybody feels better about the decision when the player's older. I think the college feels better about the older high school player. I think professional scouts feel better about the college player because they know what they're going to get, versus the young. You got such a variance on possibility things too. Why do you feel like you guys have to go a little bit younger, in your words?
Those are probably poor words. I want to say have to. I think inside our state, we need to. And the only reason I say that is just because when you look up and you want to get the best guys in your state. We have to compete with UVA, and North Carolina comes in here, and Clemson comes in here. So if we feel comfortable and with a young kid, and he has a tool that we feel can play now inside our program, from whether it be defense, run, hit, arm strength, whatever it might be, I think we're comfortable enough to make a move. But yeah, if we can wait and see what that player is going to be like, and if he's closer to that finished product of what it's going to be when he walks onto our campus, the fall of his freshman year, we will certainly do that. But we understand the recruiting battles that we go through inside our state, and we understand that we have to identify and we have to be pretty aggressive inside our state if we want to get the better talent. Right. So that's just kind of where it is. I don't like it. No one, right. I don't think any recruiter would tell you that they do, but right. That's just kind of where we're at. Right.
That's good honest answer. The other thing you mentioned was the school camps, and obviously we help high school players go on and JC players go on, and a lot of guys we get camp emails to multiple schools and stuff too, and we give them advice on yay, nay, and what have you as well. And for you guys, you want good players coming to your place, gives you a chance for everybody to evaluate them. They're on your spot, maybe your technology as well. How do you ask players to come to your camp, knowing that they may have to go to other school camps as well, knowing travel costs, knowing hotel costs? How do you guys funnel that into getting guys to your place?
I think you have to treat it like what we've used our camps and how we've treated our camps. So we've used them as, especially the kids that we're really, really in on, and the kids that we like, and the kids we want to move on. And let's say they're pre that September 1st junior year time frame, where the only way they can come to your camp and actually speak to you come to your campus and speak to you is through a camp. So we've treated them like, for us, those type of kids, we treat them like unofficial visits, where, you line them up and they're going to go to, camp in UNC, and they're going to go to a camp at some in-state school, and then they're going to come to us. We want to be prepared. We want to do our homework. We want to do our research, and we've used those camp opportunities to get around that player, be able to tour them, tour them our facilities and have them see them, and then show them those behind the scenes type things that they wouldn't be able to see just by driving through on their own or walking the campus. So those camps are really, really important, and we've treated them more so as unofficial visits. And I think that's fair. I think a lot of schools would tell you the same, but there's also kids that have showed up to our camps that we knew nothing about, that we've wanted to move on and go see play after they've left our campus.
So it's kind of like the pole position in which they come into your camp. Some come in and they're in the 6th, 7th, they need to where you're at with them. Some guys come in the 1st, but obviously they make an impression. Then it changes how fast and aggressive you are on those players.
Absolutely. But we do obviously want to get as many kids to our campus as we can. I would say summer out. I think it was like 93% of our committed kids since we've been here in the summer of 2017 have been to our camps.
How has recruiting changed for you in the last 5 to 7 years? You've been recruiting for a while. You've been a guy that's been on the road a lot. What change have you seen, whether it be from club ball to social media to networks? How has the landscape and the current college baseball recruiting changed?
Well, as I've changed levels, it's happened earlier. We've addressed that, but I think the other thing, unfortunately, that has changed the most is you got to be okay making quick decisions. If you fall in love with a player and you've seen them 2 or 3 times, unfortunately, just the way this thing works in social media, obviously emails, videos, those things have no one's hidden anymore, and so you have to be okay making quick decisions on kids nowadays. And I don't appreciate that. I don't like that, but you got to be okay, because if you really like a player and he's played well in front of you 2 or 3 times, but it's been within a month period, and you look up and the kid, you had the coach had the kid call you and he's like, "Hey coach, I got 2 offers. I got to make a decision." And I'm like, Unbelievable. It is what it is. But that's probably the biggest change. You have to be okay making early decisions on kids, quick decisions on kids. When in the past you never had to do that. You could wait and see them their freshman year, their sophomore year, and then go watch them in Georgia their junior year and be like, okay, let's line up a visit and let's see where this thing shakes out. And now it's you got to be if unless you're okay walking away from kids and losing kids, you got to be aggressive and unfortunately okay with making decisions earlier and earlier.
Let's talk about the younger kids. So let's just say you do get a kid that's committed as a freshman or a sophomore, and now you have this kid for 3 years that's been verbally committed to you. It's been posted on the websites. Parents wearing the gear. Do you have to re-recruit that player? I mean, are there coaches that don't adhere to the rules? Is it like you have to, I don't know, babysit them or be on them, or is it kind of like, you know what, we mutually both wanted this. We'll talk to you, but we don't really have to keep them by for a while?
Yeah, I don't like to use the word re-recruit. I just think you're trying to develop a relationship to where I actually tell the kids when they commit to us, I'm like we want to start coaching you, and when I say that, like as long as the NCAA rules permit, we want to give them every resource our current players have that we're allowed to.
What are you allowed to? I'm curious on that too. 'Cause it's really interesting. You start coaching them. What are you allowed to give them resource wise?
You're really not allowed to do much until their junior year, September 1, from workouts. You got to wait till they're signed. But they can see. You can obviously post drill work on social media that they can follow and see. You can put it in YouTube links where they can go and access it. But we talk through certain things from a nutrition aspect, from a development aspect. We tell guys the things that we use from an offensive perspective and from a pitching perspective. With the Rapsodo and Blast and TrackMan, and we've just added Win Reality. So if guys have access to that, we'll talk through them with the numbers, and those are some things over the phone, just person to person. You can get in terms of sending them things. We wait till they're signed, or we wait till we're allowed to send the certain correspondence that we're allowed in September 1 of their junior year. But re-recruiting, I just want to make sure we know exactly what we're getting when they come to campus.
Right.
And I probably talk to our committed players a lot more than the kids that we're actually recruiting.
Right.
So
good.
That's to be honest.
If you had to evaluate on the 3 parts, looking at player stats, metrics, or performance, I know performance stats could kind of be similar. Would you say you're more on the performance side, stat side, or more on the metric side?
You got to mesh those. I think from the offensive perspective, I think it's a combination. I think numbers don't lie. There's way more skilled, better hitting coaches in the country than me. I've not found a way to fix swing and miss. So if you swing and miss, you're going to swing and miss. If you don't see the ball well, like those things don't lie. So if you're looking at numbers purely and a kid strikes out a lot, I don't know how you fix that. And same thing on the pitching side. If you're a guy that show command, I don't know if you're going to be able to trust that player coming into your program, putting him into a high leverage situation and then asking him to throw strikes. So we do like tools, but numbers and stats certainly play a big part. When I look at guys, we're trying to project a guy to hit. So hitters hit and pitchers that throw strikes, those things are certainly non-negotiable when we recruit guys. But we will take a flyer on a kid that has some tools from a run perspective. If he can really, really run, or if he has big time power, or if a guy let's say he has a really good spin efficient pitch. I don't want to get into the pitching side of things. I'm a dummy when it comes to that. But I think you have to mesh those things. But numbers, I will put a lot into the numbers. I will, because I think those things they translate from level to level.
So let's just say some of those guys get to your school and your campus, and obviously you're coaching hitters, got a pitching coach, head guy. what tools do you guys have on campus to help those guys develop? And then second part of that question is, are those technology tools used in recruiting? Do you have to, or is it necessary to sell incoming recruits on what you have because they can go to school, you know, a few 100 miles over and see, oh my gosh, I got this. Do you deal with both those as well?
Yeah, yes and yes. We use technology and data to recruit guys, especially on the pitching side of things. You know, when we go and we go to these PG events and they're running TrackMan, I know our pitching guy is, you know, he'll watch them. He'll you know, do you like the way the arm works? And if he likes the way the arm works, he's going to go up top to the tower and he's going to start looking at the metrics. You know, what their pitchers are doing and how he uses them. So that's a must. We recruit with data. The tools that we have on campus, we have both Rapsodos, hitting Rapsodo and pitching Rapsodo. We obviously have TrackMan. We have some Edgertronic cameras from the pitching side of things. We use Blast to develop our guys' swing, and then we just added Win Reality, which is virtual reality hitting, which is absolutely phenomenal piece to the puzzle. But all that stuff doesn't mean anything unless you can apply it, right? And we hired a guy last year, Kyle Sarazin. He's our director of player development, and he's kind of the funnel. He's the guy that can take all the numbers and kind of put a plan into place for our guys to develop. But we use it to recruit, and we certainly use it when they get to campus because we need to. With all the things and all the money that we've spent, we would be remiss not to be able to put a plan into place with those resources and using those analytics.
What's the Win Reality? I'm not familiar with that. What is that exactly?
Oh man, Win Reality is basically virtual reality hitting. So the guys get the goggles.
Right.
There's a laptop and there's different packages to it, but you can essentially. It was pretty crazy. We could go and face, our hitters could stand in the box and face a live arm before they're about to hit it. So before the season got shut down to COVID-19, our guys were starting to take at bats off the three starting arms versus Miami. So that Wednesday before we played them, our guys, you know, there was a BP rotation. They were facing McMahon and they were facing Van Bell. It was pretty crazy. You know, and so that's a package that it's much like Synergy, but you acquire the footage from the players right behind home, the pitchers, and our guys put those goggles on and they're in the box and they can do strike zone discipline. They can do pitch recognition. There's a bat with a sensor on it. They can actually take swings. It's extremely involved. It's pricey, but it's certainly worth it. It's just another thing that our guys use.
One more question on tech. We'll go into our final two questions. Last question on tech would be, how do you assess if guys can handle it? How do you know if you got two players and you got those data and somebody's interpreting data and coaching the kid? How do you know which guy can take it all in and adjust and play versus the other guy who gets too much information and now is just kind of paralyzed by those things?
I think hopefully you know that going into the season, going into their fall, their freshman year, you know that through the recruiting process. We talk a lot about different tools that are out there, and some of these guys are getting more and more exposure to it, from whether it be the blast motion sensors on the knob of their bat, or they're getting, you know, these pitchers are starting to understand TrackMan. But the easiest way for us to implement it is to use the numbers, and just we constantly tell our guys, hey, we're just getting the numbers and we're going to give it to someone smarter, and then he's going to tell you to box adjust and don't swing at that pitch. That's basically what we want to. We want it to be at that basic level of communication, but there will be some guys that get a little more involved in it and talking to them in the recruiting process. And once they get to campus, hopefully we have a pretty good idea. But we do not want to. We don't want our guys to use it as a crutch. I have a rule. Last thing I'll say about it, I have a rule is if we're inside the cages, if we're indoors and we're talking about swing, that's the only place they're permitted to talk to me about swing. But if we go onto the field and we're facing live pitching, we're going to talk about approach, we're going to talk about timing, We're going to talk about ways to beat them and score runs and compete. And I think the technology side of things kind of flows into that, because if we're trying to build their swing, that happens upstairs. It doesn't happen on the field.
Good, good. Two more questions. One of the things I think that a lot of high school players don't get, just to go off to college, I don't think they understand summer ball. I don't think they get that, hey, you're going off to college for 9 months, and oh, by the way, many places are going to tell you we're going to be at for 2 or 3 months. And so my question to you is, one, who handles your summer placement? And then two would be, what is your guys' strategy among your roster to what you want to accomplish during the summer months?
Sure. Well, first off, we kind of do it as a whole. It's usually between myself, Ryan Fecto, and then Coach Chef usually handles the Cape. He has a lot of contacts in the Cape, and so do I, and so does Ryan, our pitching coach. But we kind of just bounce it back and forth. I'm in charge of the position players, and Coach Fecto will obviously send out the arms. You know, the way for us, it's like we've all heard horror stories and really, really good stories from the summer. You know, and I think the summer leagues are starting to incorporate a little more, I want to say, user-friendly type rules that protect against kids getting worn out or injured, and that's good. But basically, we're going to send kids where we feel they're going to get taken care of the most, and what they need. Some kids are going to need a lot of at-bats. They're going to go to the Northwoods League. We're going to send them there. Some kids might need to go and work on maybe just a third pitch, and they need 20 innings. We're probably going to send them to New England or the Valley or the Coastal Plains and have a pitch limit. But we want to make sure we communicate with each organization that we send a kid to, and they understand the goal behind sending that player there and what we need from them. You know, but there's so many good organizations out there that develop guys. But I think each kid, it's case by case. But we send them where we feel comfortable, and we feel like they're going to get taken care of from not only a playing time, you know, perspective, but also strength and conditioning, living. What's their living situation like? You know, so on and so forth. So it's kind of it's a mix and match. But you know, I think the one thing that's changing a little bit too is we'll see what happens with these new transfer rules. I think they're going to affect summer baseball too, unfortunately. You know, but I think the other thing that is so beneficial to our guys, especially some of our guys that play a lot early in their career, some of those guys need to spend all summer in the weight room. Like, because if they get stronger and they put 10 to 15 pounds of muscle on, they're going to be more confident, you know, coming back in the fall and competing, versus they just don't need those at-bats or those innings pitched. So that's another example of what we might do with a kid in the summer.
Last question. So let's say you're going head to head on a high end player. You're competing against, maybe it's UVA or some guys, you know, in your conference. Why Virginia Tech? Why is that player going to choose your school?
I hope because of the people. That's such a cliche answer. That's one thing that I learned from some guys in the past that I've worked for through the recruiting process. I think it's always going to be about who feels comfortable coming to work for you and coming to play for you. So at the very end of the day, you know, and I say that, Mike, with the thought of, one, I think we have the facilities to compete. I think we have the development to compete with any program in the country. But at the end of the day, I think it's always going to be about, you know, is mom and dad going to feel comfortable sending their son to play for us? And we're going to do everything we can to make that recruit feel comfortable in wanting to come play for us. So I think why Virginia Tech? Virginia Tech's slogan all the time, it's about you know, having servant leadership and being able to serve their student population. And I feel we try to be an extension of that as a baseball staff. We want to be able to just be there for our guys. And I think our people are what we sell and what's best about Virginia Tech.
Awesome. Well, thank you for your time. Like I said, I know it's you got daddy daycare going on, and I know your wife's working a little bit too. And even though we're different parts of the country, I appreciate you taking time to give our viewers some insight on kind of how you guys do things and how Division I recruiting works.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on, and you guys be safe out there. And hopefully we'll be seeing you sooner than later, bud.
Thank you, Kurt. I appreciate it.
Hey, have a good one.
You
See you,
too.
bud.
Bye.